When they took me to the police station, I was still frightened. I had my hands over my head, and I said, I will absolutely obey you. Just make sure you don't shoot me. As you can see, I was scared of them.
He didn't expect to come to the attention of the Chinese authorities here too. But after he spoke in Brisbane at this pro-Hong Kong democracy rally, his parents back in China were visited by state security officials who demanded their son cease his Australian activism.
My parents are very worried. They're worried that it might affect them. For example, their work. They could lose their job. They could go to jail because of my activities.
One of the fiercest critics of Communist Party interference in Australia is Sydney academic Dr. Feng Chongyi. While Premier Lee was being feted in Australia, Dr. Feng was back in China to meet with human rights lawyers, work he knew would draw attention.
We know that's an open secret that our telephone is tapped. We are followed everywhere, but that is a routine that we have to accept if we want to work in China.
But Dr. Feng did not expect what happened next. At his hotel in the city of Kunming, he was tracked down by agents from the Ministry of State Security. Over the next 10 days, he was subjected to intensive videotaped questioning for up to 6 hours a day. Many of the questions involved his activities in Sydney. They wanted to know about your democracy activism in Sydney?
In Sydney, yeah, that's right.
They wanted to know about your associates in Sydney?
That's right.
They knew about your family in Sydney?
That's right.
They knew specific details about names?
Actually, for my family members, they got everything. They got everything.
Dr. Feng was accused of endangering state security. Only after the intervention of the Turnbull government was he told he was finally free to return home to Sydney. He believes he was targeted by the Chinese Communist Party as a warning to others in Australia not to challenge the party.
There are several messages they are sending. One directly related to my work is that the academics better to stay away from sensitive issues or sensitive topic. Otherwise, they can get you into deep trouble, detention, or other punishment.
While Dr. Feng was trapped in China, back in Australia, Premier Lee was the guest of honour at a Chinese community event held at the Sydney Town Hall. Sitting at the head table opposite Premier Lee was Dr. Chow Chak-wing. A couple of seats over from him was another Chinese billionaire, Huang Qiangmo. Like Dr. Chow, Mr. Huang has come to the attention of ASIO. Mr. Huang is the second donor named by ASIO in its secret warning to the Coalition and Labor about the danger of Chinese Communist Party interference in Australian politics.
When we look at other business people contributing, say, to Australian political parties, we can go back through the company records and establish where that money came from. In the case of Mr. Huang, it's not quite so clear.
Mr. Huang's rise is a classic rags to riches story. From a poor rural family, he built his billion-dollar fortune as a property developer in provincial China. Mr. Huang arrived in Australia in 2011 in near total obscurity, but that didn't last for long.
How about we thank Mr. Huang with 3 cheers for his generosity today. Hip hip. Hip hip. Hip hip.
Mr. Huang and his property development firm Yuhu began donating millions of dollars to health and education initiatives, earning the praise of politicians from both parties.
I thought I'd just say a couple of words about Mr. Huang. I think it's important to get a sense of the man. He is a man of many dimensions from what I've already been able to determine. He's a very thoughtful, cerebral fellow. He's a man who thinks about life and about how we can improve it. He's a man comfortable in his own skin. He's a man with a sense of humour, which is a good thing. He's a visionary.
Mr. Huang became a major political donor too. Getting to know Tony Abbott, he gave $770,000 to the Liberals before the 2013 election. A big chunk of that went to Julie Bishop's home state of Western Australia. Mr. Huang and his associates also gave to the Trade Minister, Andrew Robb, $100,000 to his campaign fundraising vehicle, as Robb signed off on the China-Australia free trade deal. And $1.8 million went towards an Australia-China Research Institute. Mr. Huang became its chairman. Its director, former Foreign Minister Bob Carr.
First, he's seeking to establish his position, his status in the Chinese-Australian community. Secondly, I think he's trying to secure some standing for the Chinese-Australian community with various Australian governments at state and federal level. And third, through those community organisations, to secure outcomes that are favourable to Chinese state policy.
In the right company, Mr. Huang makes no secret of his devotion to the Chinese Communist Party. At an event celebrating 66 years of one-party rule in China, Mr. Huang took to the stage.
We overseas Chinese unswervingly support the Chinese government's decision to defend our nation's sovereignty and territorial integrity. We support the development of the motherland always and take on an important role in building One Belt, One Road.
Mr. Huang oversees a Communist Party-aligned council which supports Beijing's territorial claims over Taiwan, Hong Kong and the South China Sea. It's called the Australian Council for the Promotion of the Peaceful Reunification of China, and Mr. Huang is president.
That means he is a key member, supported by the Chinese authorities, including the embassy or the consulate here. That, as I said, is the most influential organization or association in the Chinese diaspora community in Australia. Whoever took the position as the head of that organization means he can be identified as the leader of the most influential figure within the Chinese community, enjoy very high status.
Mr. Huang's council is dedicated to pushing the Communist Party's interests in China and abroad.
Well, every government, of course, has an interest in promoting itself abroad, to extending its soft power. I guess what's different about China is the way in which it's run through these clandestine operations. It's just not out there and open. Secondly, it's really not out to win an argument. It's out to silence dissent. And other countries generally don't operate that way. They expect to win an argument on its strengths, not to silence all opposition. The way the Chinese government or party, through the United Front Department and the Overseas Chinese Bureau operates, is effectively to control and silence dissent.
Mr. Huang chaperoned the top Communist Party official in charge of overseas Chinese, and who was accompanying Premier Li on his Australian visit. Mr. Huang has made something of an art form of juggling his Chinese Communist Party ties with his cultivation of Australian political figures.
Obviously, he have two identities. One, of course, is a businessman, quite smart businessman. Again, the other identity, he's trying to be a political figure. He does have his own political ambition.
One of Mr Huang's advisors on the Peaceful Reunification Council is New South Wales Labor politician Ernest Wong. A close ally and friend, the pair travelled to Taiwan together on Reunification Council business. In November 2012, Mr Huang and two other Reunification Council members donated $500,000 to the New South Wales ALP. 6 months later, the ALP put Ernest Wong into the New South Wales Upper House seat, formerly held by Labor's Eric Roosendaal. Roosendaal went on to get a job with Mr Huang.
Well, Mr Huang is very generous to all parties. He could hardly be called partisan. He contributes to the Liberal Party as well as to the Labor Party. He's also a very generous employer of former party operatives.
Another of Mr Huang's political allies and a fellow member of the Peaceful Reunification Council is active ALP identity Simon Joe. Joe was given the last place on the Labor Party's Senate ticket at last year's election, a month after two of his business associates donated $60,000 to the ALP. Mr Huang was at the announcement.
As China's power keeps rising, the status of overseas Chinese is also rising. Now, overseas Chinese realize that they need to make their voices heard in politics to safeguard Chinese interests and let Australian society pay more attention to the Chinese. This is a very good thing.